ExamPrep.School. Colorado Personal Lines Insurance Producer Exam code INSCO-PERS 55. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Colorado statutes, just rules common to life, A and H, property, casualty, and personal lines. Colorado statutes, awesome rules common to property, casualty, and personal lines only. Colorado statutes, rules pertinent to casualty insurance only. Colorado statutes, rules pertinent to property insurance only. Policy provisions and contract law. Property and casualty insurance terms and related concepts. Types of casualty policies. Types of property policies. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Under the H.O.2 named perils dwelling coverage form, which of the following perils is excluded unless added by endorsement? A. Vandalism. B. Weight of ice, snow, or sleet. C. Accidental discharge of water from plumbing. D. Earthquake. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is that earthquake is not among the named perils listed in the HO2 form and must be added by endorsement for coverage. Reason A is not correct. Vandalism is a named peril included under an HO2 dwelling coverage form. Reason B is not correct. Weight of ice, snow, or sleet is specifically named in the HO2 peril list. Reason C is not correct. Accidental discharge or overflow of water from plumbing is a named peril in HO2. Question 2. Which peril is specifically excluded under Section 1 of the HO? 3 open perils dwelling coverage form, despite its open perils approach. A. Wear and tear. B. Earth movement. C. Civil authority. D. Nuclear hazard. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is that earth movement is one of the section that is exclusions in the HO3 form, even though open perils covers all other perils not specifically excluded. Reason A is not correct. Wear and tear is excluded under Section 1 but is a consequential loss, not a direct peril exclusion context. Reason C is not correct. Civil authority is a section that is exclusion but applies only after government action following a loss, not a standard peril exclusion. Reason D is not correct. Nuclear hazard is excluded under Section 1 but is part of the broader nuclear exclusion, not earth movement. Question 3. Under an HO4 renter's policy, what percentage of the coverage C limit applies automatically to personal property while it is temporarily away from the residence premises? A. 25% of personal property coverage. B. 50% of personal property coverage. C. 100% of personal property coverage. D. 10% of personal property coverage. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is that HO4 policies automatically extend coverage C by 10% for personal property temporarily away from the residence premises. Reason A is not correct. A 25% off-premises limit is not the standard sublimit for HO4 temporary away coverage. Reason B is not correct. A 50% off-premises limit exceeds the actual 10% sublimit provided under HO4. Reason C is not correct. Full 100% off-premises coverage is incorrect, since HO4 only grants a 10% extension. Question 4. Which coverage in the HO6 policy will pay for the $2,000 assessment levied by the condominium association? A. Coverage A. Improvements and betterments. B. Additional coverage for loss assessments. C. Coverage C. Personal property. D. Coverage D. Loss of use. The correct answer is B. The additional coverage for loss assessments specifically covers an insured's share of an association's common loss assessment. Improvements coverage applies only to interior alterations, personal property covers belongings, and loss of use covers additional living expenses. Reason A is not correct. Improvements and betterments coverage applies only to the insured's own interior alterations, not association assessments. Reason C is not correct. Personal property coverage applies to the insured's belongings and does not extend to assessments by the association. Reason D is not correct. Loss of use coverage pays for living expenses if a unit is uninhabitable, not for financial assessments. Question 5. Which of the following perils is not covered under the dwelling property basic form, DP1? A. Riot or civil commotion. B. Smoke damage. C. Weight of ice, snow, or sleet. D. Explosion. The correct answer is C. The dwelling property basic form covers named perils such as riot or civil commotion, smoke damage, and explosion. It does not cover losses from the weight of ice, snow, or sleet, which is a broad form, DP2, peril. Reason A is not correct. Losses from riot or civil commotion are explicitly listed as covered perils in DP1. Reason B is not correct. Smoke damage is a named peril covered under the DP1 basic form. Reason D is not correct. Explosion is one of the 3 original named perils in the DP1 basic form. Question 6. Which of the following perils is an additional named peril under the dwelling property broad form, DP2, that is not covered in DP1? A. Volcanic eruption. B. Smoke damage. C. Falling objects. D. Explosion. The correct answer is C. The broad form DP2 adds perils such as falling objects beyond the basic form list. Volcanic eruption, smoke damage, and explosion are already covered in DP1. Reason A is not correct. Volcanic eruption is a named peril in DP1, not a new DP2 addition. Reason B is not correct. Smoke damage is included in the DP1 basic form, so it is not unique to DP2. Reason D is not correct. Explosion is covered under DP1 and thus is not an additional DP2 peril. Question 7. A homeowner's DP. 3 special form dwelling has a concealed rodent infestation that chews through electrical wiring, causing a short circuit and subsequent fire that damages the structure. Under the terms of the DP3 special form, which of the following correctly describes the coverage for these losses? A. Structural fire damage is covered, but the rodent-caused wiring damage is not covered. B. No part of the loss is covered because of the animal damage exclusion bar's coverage for the resulting fire. C. Both wiring replacement and structural repairs are fully covered under the open perils dwelling coverage. D. Wiring replacement is covered, but structural fire damage is excluded under the DP3 special form. The correct answer is A. The DP3 special form provides open perils coverage for the dwelling, so resulting fire damage is covered. However, damage caused directly by rodents is excluded under the animal or vermin exclusion, so the wiring damage is not insured. Reason B is not correct. It is incorrect to deny all coverage because fire is a covered peril under the DP3 special form, even if caused by an excluded animal action. Reason C is not correct. It is incorrect to allow full coverage, because while fire damage is covered, the policy excludes damage caused directly by animals, so wiring replacement is not covered. Reason D is not correct. It is incorrect to provide wiring coverage but deny structural fire damage because the policy excludes animal damage but includes fire damage under open perils coverage. Question 8. Under the National Flood Insurance Program, what is the maximum building coverage limit available for a single-family residential structure? A. $250,000. B. $200,000. C. $300,000. D. $500,000. The correct answer is A. The standard NFIP policy provides building coverage up to $250,000 for single-family residential structures. Reason B is not correct. The NFIP limit exceeds $200,000, making this figure too low. Reason C is not correct. The NFIP building coverage maximum does not extend to $300,000 under the standard program. Reason D is not correct. A $500,000 building limit surpasses the NFIP's standard policy maximum. Question 9. Under NFIP guidelines, which of the following is ineligible for contents coverage under a standard flood insurance policy? A. Clothing. B. Kitchen appliances. C. Electronic equipment. D. Paper currency. The correct answer is D. The NFIP specifically excludes paper currency and similar negotiable instruments from contents coverage. Reason A is not correct. Household clothing is classified as personal property and is covered under NFIP contents. Reason B is not correct. Kitchen appliances located within the dwelling are eligible for NFIP contents coverage. Reason C is not correct. Electronic equipment such as televisions and computers is included in NFIP contents coverage. Question 10. A homeowner in a participating NFIP community has an existing flood insurance policy. FEMA issues a revised flood insurance rate map on May 15th, reclassifying the property's flood zone, and the homeowner requests an endorsement to reflect the new zone on May 16th. On what date does the endorsement become effective? A. May 16th. B. May 15th. C. June 15th. D. This option correctly explains that producers use the non-admitted market when coverage or limits required are not offered by admitted insurers. The correct answer is B. Flood map revision endorsements under the NFIP take effect on the date the revised map becomes effective, so coverage for the new zone begins on the map revision date, May 15th. Reason A is not correct. Coverage does not begin on the endorsement request date. It begins on the map revision date. Reason C is not correct. A 30-day waiting period applies to new policies, not to map revision endorsements. Reason D is not correct. There is no 30-day delay after a map revision. The endorsement is effective on the map's effective date. Question 11. Which term best describes the valuation method used by a personal articles floater when the insurer and insured agree in advance on an item's insured amount? A. Actual cash value. B. Stated amount. C. Agreed value. D. Replacement cost value. The correct answer is C. This valuation method is known as agreed value because the insurer and insured fix the item's value in advance, eliminating depreciation in a loss settlement. Reason A is not correct. Actual cash value is based on replacement cost minus depreciation, not a pre-agreed sum. Reason B is not correct. Stated amount may pay the lesser of the stated or actual cash value rather than a fixed agreed value. Reason D is not correct. Replacement cost value pays to replace without depreciation, but does not involve a pre-agreed fixed value. Question 12. During a covered theft, the insured's engagement ring valued at $6,000 is stolen. Her inland marine floater provides a $3,000 blanket limit for unscheduled jewelry, but allows scheduling this ring for $6,000. How would the theft settlement differ if the ring were scheduled rather than covered under the blanket limit? A. Scheduled coverage pays the full $6,000 agreed value with no deductible. Blanket coverage pays actual cash value up to $3,000 minus deductible. B. Scheduled coverage pays actual cash value up to $6,000 minus deductible. Blanket coverage pays agreed value up to $3,000. C. Scheduled coverage pays agreed value up to $6,000 minus deductible. Blanket coverage pays actual cash value up to $3,000 without deductible. D. Scheduled and blanket coverage both pay actual cash value up to $3,000 minus deductible. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that scheduled coverage provides the full agreed value without applying a deductible, whereas blanket coverage limits payment to the actual cash value up to the blanket limit after subtracting the deductible. Reason B is not correct. This option is incorrect because scheduled coverage pays the full agreed value, not the actual cash value minus deductible. Reason C is not correct. This option is incorrect because scheduled coverage removes the deductible, whereas blanket coverage retains it. Reason D is not correct. This option is incorrect because scheduled coverage extends the limit and value beyond the blanket amount. Question 13. In a personal auto policy with split limit liability of 100-300 divided by 50, what does the first limit represent? A. A combined single limit for both bodily injury and property damage. B. The maximum the insurer will pay for bodily injury per accident, regardless of number of persons injured. C. The maximum the insurer will pay for property damage liability per accident. D. The maximum the insurer will pay for bodily injury per person injured in a covered accident. The correct answer is D. The first number in a split limit liability, 100-300 divided by 50, denotes the per person bodily injury limit, representing the maximum payable for each injured individual. Reason A is not correct. A combined single limit is an alternative liability format, not part of a split limit structure. Reason B is not correct. This describes the per accident bodily injury limit, which is represented by the second number in split limits. Reason C is not correct. Property damage liability is addressed by the third or separate limit, not the first bodily injury limit. Question 14. Under Part A property damage liability coverage of the personal auto policy, coverage would be excluded for damage to which of the following? A. A barrier fence damaged by a covered auto. B. The insured's own detached garage. C. Another person's parked vehicle. D. A trailer towed by the covered auto. The correct answer is B. Property damage liability under Part A covers damage for which the insured is legally liable to others. Damage to the insured's own property is excluded. Reason A is not correct. Damage to someone else's property by a covered auto is exactly what property damage liability covers. Reason C is not correct. Liability covers legal responsibility for damage to another person's vehicle. Reason D is not correct. A trailer towed by a covered auto is treated as property of others and is covered. Question 15. Under Part A liability coverage of the personal auto policy, which individual would be considered an insured while operating the covered auto with the named insured's permission? A. Any individual named in a separate commercial auto policy. B. Any person using a non-owned auto without permission. C. Any person using the covered auto with permission of the named insured. D. The named insured's spouse living outside the same household. The correct answer is C. Part A liability extends to anyone who operates the covered auto with the named insured's permission, classifying permissive users as insureds. Reason A is not correct. Coverage does not extend to individuals insured under a completely separate commercial auto policy. Reason B is not correct. Operating a non-owned auto without permission removes liability coverage under this policy. Reason D is not correct. A spouse is only covered if residing in the same household with the named insured. Question 16. A policyholder carries a personal auto policy PAP with liability limits of 50 divided by 100 while driving through state X where minimum liability limits are 75 divided by 150. The policy includes an out-of-state coverage provision. What is the primary purpose of this provision in the PAP? A. Temporarily raise the policy's liability limits to meet state X's minimum requirements. B. Provide liability coverage for rental vehicles used outside the home state. C. Extend medical payments coverage to passengers injured in another state. D. Increase uninsured motorist coverage when driving out of state. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is the out-of-state coverage provision exists to ensure the insured's liability limits automatically adjust to satisfy higher financial responsibility requirements of other states, providing compliance with local laws. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because the out-of-state coverage provision does not address coverage for rental vehicles. Reason C is not correct. This option is incorrect because extending medical payments to passengers is unrelated to meeting state liability limit requirements. Reason D is not correct. This distractor is incorrect because it does not relate to uninsured motorist coverage or out-of-state financial responsibility laws. Question 17. An insured under a PAP is sued for bodily injury liability arising from an at-fault accident. Which of the following expenses would the insurer cover as a supplementary payment under the liability section? A. Interest accruing on a covered judgment after its entry. B. Repair costs for the insured's damaged vehicle. And C. Medical expenses of an insured passenger. D. Collision deductible for a rented substitute vehicle. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that interest accruing on a covered judgment is paid as a supplementary payment under the liability section, subject to policy limits. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because vehicle repair costs fall under physical damage coverage, not supplementary payments. Reason C is not correct. This option is incorrect because medical expenses of passengers are handled by the medical payments section, not supplementary payments. Reason D is not correct. This distractor is incorrect because collision deductibles are related to physical damage coverage for a substitute vehicle, not supplementary payments. Question 18. Under Part B medical payments of a personal auto policy, medical expenses are covered only if incurred within how many years from the date of the accident? A. 1 year. B. 2 years. C. 3 years. D. 4 years. The correct answer is C. The policy specifies that covered medical expenses must be incurred within 3 years of the accident date. Expenses after 3 years are excluded. Reason A is not correct. 1 year is too short. The policy extends coverage beyond 12 months. Reason B is not correct. 2 years is insufficient. The actual allowable period is longer. Reason D is not correct. 4 years exceeds the policy limit. Coverage ends at 3 years. Question 19. Which of the following individuals is not a covered person under the medical payments, Part B coverage of a personal auto policy? A. A resident family member injured as a pedestrian when struck by another vehicle. B. A guest driver injured while operating the insured vehicle with permission. C. The named insured injured while riding in a non-owned private passenger auto. D. An employee injured while delivering goods for the named insured in their vehicle. The correct answer is D. Medical payments coverage applies to specified persons such as the named insured, resident family members, and permissive users, but excludes work-related injuries which are handled by workers' compensation. Reason A is not correct. Pedestrian injuries to resident family members are covered regardless of fault. Reason B is not correct. Permissive users driving the insured vehicle are covered for medical payments. Reason C is not correct. The named insured is covered when occupying any private passenger auto, owned or non-owned. Question 20. A pedestrian was struck by the insured's car at an intersection and sustained significant medical expenses. Under the insured's medical payments coverage, which statement is correct? A. Coverage applies only if the pedestrian was occupying the insured vehicle at the time of the accident. B. Medical payments coverage will reimburse the pedestrian's medical expenses regardless of the insured's fault, up to the per-person limit. C. Medical payments coverage reimburses the pedestrian's medical expenses only if the insured was not at fault. D. Medical payments coverage does not apply to pedestrians and medical expenses must be paid under personal injury protection. The correct answer is B. Medical payments coverage in a personal auto policy reimburses reasonable medical expenses for anyone injured by the insured vehicle, including pedestrians, regardless of fault, up to the per-person limit. Reason A is not correct. Coverage is not limited to occupants of the insured vehicle. Pedestrians struck by the insured auto are included. Reason C is not correct. Medical payments coverage is no fault and reimburses regardless of who caused the accident. Reason D is not correct. Medical payments is separate from personal injury protection and does cover pedestrians struck by the insured auto. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.